Lost on Chain podcast by Irish NFT Gal.
Hello everyone, my name is Irish NFT Gal and welcome to the third episode of Lost on Chain podcast. I am here by a lovely Irish chap. His name is Paul Dylan-Ennis and he is a close friend of mine, let's say. He's a lecturer of business with blockchain education modules in UCD here in Ireland. He is a speaker. Recently was speaking with Vitalik at ETH Brussels, and is also a writer from the book Absolute Essentials of Ethereum, that is available on Amazon and elsewhere as well. And I'm really excited to talk all about the culture of Web3, specifically Ethereum, a little bit about the governance and a little bit about social layer, what it actually means and what is behind that. So, Paul, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more and talk about, why Ethereum?
So my day job is a lecturer in a University College Dublin. So I'm in the College of Business. I have undergraduate and postgraduate classes. So I'm pretty lucky. I think I do what a lot of people in the crypto industry do anyway, which is basically keep up with crypto, try to understand it. And then the only big difference is that I also teach it to other people. So it's great. I get paid to be on crypto Twitter all day and listen to podcasts, etc. And then the book, Absolute Essentials of Ethereum. There's a bunch of other things that I sort of do, which would be lesser known, I guess. So I'm a delegate at Lido, at ZK Sync. I'm on the board at the Aragon Foundation, so that would be the more, business side of things. And then, co-organizer of ETH Dublin. So we're, it's like a local conference, which is really beginning to take off, I would say. So, a few other, I always forget different things, but CoinDesk, I used to write articles for CoinDesk and Blockworks and so on.
Wow. And tell me a little bit about your background prior to crypto, how you first even heard about crypto, because I want to know, do you have a tech background, or was your hobby more the journalism side of things, the writing side of things? Were you always keen into writing?
I'm definitely have an unexpected background there. So a lot of people I think are shocked to discover. So my PhD is in philosophy, which is not the most obvious thing that you could be. There's not many philosophy PhDs in the business school. I'm definitely a bit unusual in that regard. So it's been it's an accident. It's the same with everybody else in crypto, where you're doing something else and crypto came along and you kind of got sidetracked. So I first heard about crypto or Bitcoin at that time in 2012, but I wasn't a participant in the crypto community at that point. So I just had friends who were involved in different digital privacy activist groups like WikiLeaks, and they would talk about the embargo. So WikiLeaks was embargoed by the US government back in 2011/12. And so it caught my attention. Okay, my friends are interested in this thing called Bitcoin. So maybe I'll look into it one day. And then I started hearing stories about Silk Road, so the darknet marketplace. So people were talking about, you can buy drugs on the internet with this, anonymous digital currency. So at that point, I was like, okay, I've heard about it twice now. And so that's what initially made me start going to the Bitcoin Talk forums. And the reason why I was more interested in what really drew me in is that even though I was doing philosophy, and that's kind of my real was my main focus, just a traditional theory writer kind of person who may end up as a journalist if they fail as an academic, like a classic second choice. So when I got to that forum, it reminded me of a lot of the tech forums that I've been involved and interested in since way back. So I'd always had an interest in the open source side of things. So using Linux, using encrypting my laptop, and using VPNs way back in the day. So I've always had that as I wouldn't say it was a passion. It wasn't the main thing I was interested in. But it was definitely, other people would probably say, okay, he was really into computers, but that's how I sort of had that sort of side interest. And so when I got to the Bitcoin Talk forums, I was like, okay, this is a continuation of the kinds of things I used to be in back in the day, and then kind of lost track of it. And I recognized something in the Bitcoin community which was similar to the open source type of world. And then from there, I just got pulled in by the strangeness of it. So the main attraction for me has always been the culture side of it. That there, when you were, or when we were like growing up, at least for me, I always had this feeling that like all the cool radical things had already happened. So like, like punk had happened and hippies had happened and like raves had happened. There's all these like countercultural movements. And then by the time, like it got to the point where I was supposed to like experience some big, upheaval in society, nothing came. And so when I looked at it, I thought, okay, this is something genuinely novel. Like I don't know what libertarianism is at this time. I don't know what cypherpunk is. I don't know anything about finance. I don't know anything about like the actual mechanics of, say, something like Bitcoin, the real technology that was going on. All of it was new to me. So that's really what pulled me in, was the sense of the unusual, the sense of like something that felt genuinely new to me, like as in I could actually explore this. And then sort of over the years, as I fell more into it, so I got into things like Darkcoin, which eventually became Dash, Litecoin, so these early alternatives to Bitcoin. And I was doing an academic job, so I was doing academic like work in humanities and philosophy. And then just by chance, I was doing a postdoc in Trinity. I saw a job ad in UCD for a blockchain researcher. They're just looking for someone to do to be the blockchain person. And so I went for that interview because at the time I was basically, doing bits and pieces, kind of like constructing a single job out of many different small courses across Dublin. And then, I got the job, much to my surprise. And then later on, they told me it was because there was like no one else. He said, if it had have been now, like it would have been a much harder thing. There's people with PhDs in crypto, etc. But at the time, there was no one else. I had a PhD and I was interested in Bitcoin, and that was enough to get me in the door.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that about the blockchain researcher part. That's really interesting because even today, I think that would still impress people. I know you said like that there'd be more now, but I still like don't see a lot. Like for instance, I was recently talking to a girl who studied business in Cork, CIT, one of the Cork institutes, and she like this was years ago, this was about 6 years ago, and she said like her lecturer brought up Bitcoin and brought up like the Bitcoin the white paper, and they actually had to learn it for an assignment. And I was like, that's so cool. Like I hope your lecturer, actually like made a lot of money and didn't just like have an interest in it, right? But like I find it hard to believe that it's brought into so many different like courses and educational side of things. And it like there is a lot of research done on it, but then there's, for like a university to bring it in, it's kind of surprising because it's still so new. But I haven't heard a lot of it happening in other countries. But in Ireland, it's starting to get more and more popular. People are believing in blockchain technology. Like if we even step back a little bit from like the Web3 and crypto community, like blockchain is massive in Ireland. It is, but it's not an area that a lot of people believe that their business could transition to, or you could get into, because it's in the business side of things. Blockchain is so different compared to if you look at it from the crypto perspective. Like I wouldn't have had interest with the business blockchain perspective, but when it comes to crypto, I 100% do. So it's interesting. People need to kind of like deep dive more into it, and not just like, if they don't think it's for them straight away, it could be. So you definitely did, in my opinion, as well, have a bit of like tech background. I know you said philosophy. So you wanted to kind of combine lots of different things, and that's good that you brought that up, because like, did you feel a little bit that you were like diving into like so many different areas to try and find what you truly loved? Now do you find that you're more like an expert in your field, or are you still dabbling in like lots of different things?
Yeah. So I'm definitely the kind of person who gets distracted by many interests, which I used to consider a flaw. Like that used to be something I was like constantly worried about. Like, so I'd worry, like the thing to do is I should focus just on the tech side of it, and then just become like a specialist in some obscure part of like crypto, and then that will be what I'll be recognized for. Or I'll go all the way the other way and focus purely on writing about the culture of Ethereum. And I think I like when I actually started to get, say, like people actually paying attention to the work is when I stopped caring about that as much. And so like what I do have a kind of rule, which is that anything I'm writing, one must explain the other. So if I'm writing about something that's technical, I try to bring in a cultural explanation, which justifies why, say, the Ethereum community is so interested in the layer 2 roadmap or something like that. Which for a lot of outsiders might be considered, they've gone too deep into like one direction, and it's like, well, there's like this long history of why they've done that. Or the other way that culture can sort of emerge by like random technological developments. Like let's say like the introduction of NFTs, basically an application standard, gives birth to this creative, more aesthetically attuned group of people in the crypto industry who didn't exist before. Before like NFT type people came along, the crypto aesthetics were terrible. And this used to be something I used to really hate, like just how bad everything looked, the websites and so on. So there are always these fortunate accidents. And then that's what I like to try to explain is like how the culture and technology feed back to each other to make something kind of happen. So nowadays I feel relaxed about it because I've done my tech side of it. I've written the books, so the tech side is done. And now I'm kind of focused on the culture side for a little bit. So I'm going to write something, maybe a book like on the culture side. So now I kind of go with the idea of it's giving myself a break by going into one for a while. And then I'm bored of that. And then I'll go into the other. So I think it works out now.
Wow. And the culture side of things, I want to definitely talk in a little bit about like how like Ethereum's culture and the crypto community as a whole has evolved since you joined. So what year did you first get involved in crypto?
Yeah, so I mean, I would have been paying attention to the forums around 2012 is the first time I saw them, and I remember it's very hard for me to kind of remember the exact because it's in the past now. It's actually kind of getting really into the past, and so I can't quite remember what I was doing. I remember it being more like something I would dip into every so often. So maybe on the weekend if I was bored and I had nothing to do, or I had some time to kill, I would go look into crypto things. So like relative to today, where if someone's involved in crypto, like if you're involved in crypto, it's almost like a full-time thing. It's like either a job, or you're just like a holder, or you're just fascinated by it. So people are like 100% 24/7 into crypto, whereas back then you could like read everything about Bitcoin in like 1 or 2 hours. Like nothing really happened that often. There was no media stories, first of all, so there was no media covering it. So it hadn't reached mainstream media except maybe for Silk Road every so often. So it was much more like sort of easy to dip into it. And like when I look back at it then, the culture was, well, the one thing that was very clear is that everybody was more or less either a libertarian, meaning a sort of American libertarian perspective. So things like someone who's concerned about inflation, who thinks we maybe should go back to the gold standard, who thinks like too much regulation is bad. We need to minimize the influence of the state, all those kinds of things that you would associate with Bitcoiners today. Bitcoiners still have the libertarian spirit. They're the ones who are clearly on that. And then the other side would be very cypherpunk people, more cypherpunk than you would tend to find today, meaning people who are interested in, say, decentralization, permissionlessness, censorship resistance. So they being like the three main qualities. They would have been more hardcore, I guess. They would have been so you imagine the kind of people who found Bitcoin or crypto in the beginning were the kinds of people who were searching out that kind of thing. So they weren't financially motivated because they were, Bitcoins were, even when they were worth something, weren't worth much, even up to like 2013, 14 sort of era. So it was more ideological, I guess you could say, and people argued more explicitly. So the average user argued in libertarian or cypherpunk terms, like they used that language with each other and would call each other out more on those kinds of things. So anybody trying to do something centralized was very stood out, I guess. Whereas today there's so much going on that you cannot always see the contradictions that are going on. So that would be like the early Bitcoin community, and then Ethereum's like 2013, 14, 15. So Ethereum is the white paper is 2013, like late 2013, but Ethereum doesn't launch until 2015. And most of the people who make up the early Ethereum community are essentially people who are leaving Bitcoin culture. You know, they see something kind of more attractive in Ethereum, which is that it's more cooperative, that it's less libertarian, so less like financially libertarian, I guess. There's still like a libertarian spirit there, but they're less interested in kind of like gold bug, like digital gold bug type philosophies. So and that's an important thing, that the early Ethereum culture like loses something of the Bitcoin libertarianism, and then kind of is mostly like just a single cypherpunky kind of ideology at work. So that's one thing that would have been noticeable. The other thing would be the ambitious nature of early Ethereum. So the idea of like people have like a very maybe overly ambitious view of what Ethereum could do. So at the time, people talked about things like integrating smart contracts into self-driving cars, opening locks at Airbnbs using like, smart contracts. They had a browser called Mist, so you would have like a full browser experience. So imagine a kind of like Google experience, but like it's like an Ethereum browser, and you would do everything in there. So that's something that I always think was like, it's kind of sad that got lost. But that was my sort of impression, that a cypherpunk foundation plus a much more ambitious builder community is how I would characterize. And then like it's that gets knocked out of people by the DAO hack in 2016.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned community there. You mentioned community builder, and that stood out to me. That I feel like I don't know, there's a real sense of belonging with the Ethereum community, but most people do find out about crypto through Bitcoin. So they are like interconnected in most people's stories and most people's like history, right? So like there's definitely like a love for both. But I do have a deep passion for Ethereum because I've worked for mainly Ethereum NFT projects. So it's definitely something that I want to discuss and focus on today is Ethereum, because at the moment the market is up, it's down. It's gone down, I believe, to the same price Ethereum was in early days, like in 2021, around the same price. It's like at 1,200, I think today. It's gone down a lot. And I think a lot of people are unhappy, but for the long term part of it, like people are really looking into what they can actually do on it, what they can actually build on it. And we might talk a little bit about like L2s and that later on. But what is like one thing for you that remains unchanged on Ethereum network and the Ethereum blockchain? Like it could be it could be like the people. It could be anything.
The one thing that remains unchanged, I guess there's I wouldn't call it like optimism. It's like a kind of like an unrealistic optimism or something like that, or like in the sense of like in a good way. It sounds like I'm sort of saying like they're unrealistically believing in some kind of like optimistic future. But I've always liked about Ethereum is that like even when things are kind of like stacked against it, even when things are going wrong, which is quite a lot, you take a lot of kind of ambient abuse, like just for being like a supporter of something like Ethereum. And actually, this is true of every chain. You kind of forget if you're in, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana, one of the big ones, that of course, like someone in an Avalanche or something is like going through like a similar thing, like somewhere in some other little bubble. So I've always liked this idea that despite all of this, there is this kind of like optimism and belief because people stick around. The retail comes in, and we've had many kind of examples of this where crypto becomes mainstream for a little bit and something goes terribly wrong, like FTX or something, and then recently just it kind of seems to happen more. So the persistent optimism, which maybe is like, so, like I veer between like, are we just all crazy? Like, are we just like foolishly supporting this kind of thing? But I do also admire that people still believe that there is something there, which I do as well. Like I think it's there's a book called Resistance Money about Bitcoin. It's just like a defense of Bitcoin. Would the world be better off if Bitcoin existed or didn't exist? It's like the basic premise of the book. And they go through all of the bad things, like all the cybercrime and etc. And then they say, well, it's still like fundamentally good that we have a money that's outside of the state. For there's different situations where that seems sensible. Like the world could change in a way where you would need to have that. And I feel the same way about Ethereum. That it, like for all its flaws, I wouldn't want to live in. I don't want to live in a world where there is no decentralized option. Like that kind of scares me a little bit. There should be some alternative direction that you can take if things go wrong in society. That should be so I see that's what keeps me sort of going, is this the more options the better, I think, in any society.
Absolutely. And I totally agree when you said decentralization, because like you can have that as even a separate discussion in itself and say nothing is 100% decentralized, but it's to have an extra option open for people like to think that way. So for anyone that doesn't know what a DAO stands for as well, because the DAOs are very big in the crypto space. They used to be even bigger, I would say, like 2-3 years ago, where everyone was creating the DAO because anyone can create one, and that's like the beauty of it as well. But for anyone that doesn't know like about DAOs, we could talk a little bit about that. What is some of the best known DAOs that are out there in the space? Like, is there ones that stand out to you, that are maybe ones that are around the longest, or ones that are even just known to be more popular? What kind of groups are like stand out to you in, and it doesn't have to be Ethereum either, but just in the crypto community?
So like a DAO, I mean, my definition of a DAO is just like any blockchain, any community. It could be like usually a blockchain community of some sort that uses like blockchains to self-organize in some kind of way. So you've got some kind of mission, and you use smart contracts to manage a treasury. Then you're a DAO in my definition. Like you don't need anything more than that. And so there are many, and that there was an era where like people are forming DAOs like absolutely kind of everywhere. And in a way, and some of those DAOs have survived. Like I would give just as an example of DAOs from that era which are still quite influential, say Boys Club DAO and SheFi, where they were part of this like social DAO. Friends with Benefits was the other famous one. So creative DAOs where they were just like, they technically don't need a blockchain or don't need a token to exist, but they are like a benefit. It's been a good thing. Their presence at events, their their influence and their effect has been, like, I'd say, quite positive on crypto, making it like a way more welcoming and often like more interesting place. So a lot, like if you go to a modern crypto event, it's because of those DAOs that like the best events exist. Like if you look at what are the events you would want to go to. I don't really go to events much now, but if I was, it's those events. So they have been, even those smaller kind of DAOs, I think, have had an influence over time. And then the DAOs that have really survived are the ones with effectively the ones with huge treasuries. Like, so having a huge treasury is sort of the key to longevity, and that typically comes with being a layer 2. So Optimism, Arbitrum, ZK Sync, etc. They all are run as DAOs. So it's normal for a layer 2 to be organized as a DAO. So so that's where you would tend to see like that's an interesting kind of standard. Like if you're a layer 2, you must be a DAO. And then like large DeFi protocols, so like Aave would be a very successful DAO. And then the one that I kind of like the most, my sort of example of best run would be Lido. So Lido being the restaking protocol, which famously has 28% of all staked ETH in that single protocol. And the reason I like it is because it is like how highly organized it is. In a way, they probably hate me saying this, but it's almost like it's almost like a decentralized company. So it is organized as a DAO, like token voting, delegates. There's all kind of like checks and balances, but the committees that they have are all highly professional, and they have like a strategy and vision from like Hasu. He's kind of like their strategic advisor, and he says like, this is what we're going to do over the next, say, 2 years or next year. And then the committees like work to make it happen and work within the boundaries and the ranges of that vision. And to me, it's just like a highly effective organization. And so when I'm voting there as a delegate, it's like the one place where so when you're voting, they give you the like what's happening in plain English. They give you the code effects as well. So they do like all the steps in the code. And then they do an explainer of like what's happening in at the conceptual and technical. Like they really go all the way through to make sure that you're making an informed kind of decision. So you actually feel like you're not just clicking vote just to be seen as like a delegate. So yeah, I mean, that tends to be the case. So I'd say like, yeah, Lido, Aave, and the Optimisms and the Arbitrums of the world would tend to be the best run DAOs. And like as time goes on, like they're just going to become more professional. There's a lot of service providers in modern DAOs as well. So like there's like financial accountants and all kinds of things.
Wow, there's so many you mentioned, and I know It's funny you said friends with benefits. I actually was randomly looking at that one yesterday on their Twitter profile. I was just doing a glance as to like different how different DAOs communicate, and it just interests me how they can try and entice more people to vote on like proposals, or how they market like governance and so on, and how important it is to them. And that was one that popped up. I was already following them, I think, for a good while, but that is one that I was like the number one. I was like, oh, okay, this one has like massive like following, and yeah, it was kind of one of the most popular ones that I was looking at that I hadn't thought of about before. So I'm glad that you brought that one up. I definitely want to talk a little bit about like your like classroom experience and education, because I love education in the blockchain space. I think that we don't have enough like educators, and we definitely don't have enough people in real life teaching as well, which is really interesting. So definitely want to talk a little bit about that. But what is it like for you to be, a lecturer in Ireland and like teaching about like the business side of blockchain? Like, what kind of questions do you get? Do you get, like, obviously these students want to learn, right? So it's biased in that way. But do you get any crazy questions?
Yeah, I think like so on the question of like why like needing like in real life lectures, and like, so we have like a lot of education things going on, right? Like that's in crypto itself, like Bankless Academy and all those kinds of things. And but like in universities, there's not say too many. And so, I mean, for me, it's like a little bit of a vocational thing. I often like have like I've been asked before, like, why don't you leave? And I get like job offers, which I could definitely leave for. But I do sort of feel that sort of pressure of there's like not enough of, especially like pro crypto academics. There's like, I'm sure there's some that aren't. So I could probably like name all 10 of us like on my hands. But in terms of the crazy questions that students come up with, or like what are the most common ones? I mean, you don't tend to get anything too crazy. This is one thing I think is interesting, is that that people also ask you, which is like, have you ever had like kind of crazy students or something like this? And in my experience, that doesn't really happen at university. I think I've only ever had like one student that you would call disruptive, like in the same way a school teacher might. I only ever had like one. It always stick in my head as like that's the only one. So what tends to happen is, it's not that the students are asking kind of outrageous questions about crypto, but you get some students who are very skeptical, and then they become like they really struggle, and I think in a very legitimate way, with like kind of like why you're so pro crypto when I'm also talking about, say, the Bybit hack. So like last week we were talking about Bybit, 1.5 million. And like that student is sort of like the bellwether who's saying like, how can you consider this like a serious industry if like North Korea can steal 1.5 billion from a smart contract and use it to fund their nuclear program? And it's those kind of questions where I really struggle to kind of answer them, or if I do try to answer them, but there's a in some sense they're kind of right, and it's very hard to argue against. Like that's like they have a sensible kind of perspective. The other common thing is students kind of trying to ask you about like things to invest in, but like asking it in a kind of indirect way in the class itself. So a lot of students will come after the class and talk to you about what they're doing, and they'll show me a bunch of things that I've never heard of before. Or they'll ask me about something like, what do you think about like real world assets? And I know that really means they're going to ask me about some specific real world asset token that they're interested in. But sometimes they'll try to work it in to a question like we're talking about, layer twos or something. And the question will be, is there any emerging layer two protocol that you would specifically focus on or are focused on? And as they're talking, you realize that they're trying to find out, like, are you involved in something where I think that it's going to go up in price? So you have to be a little bit careful about endorsing anything or saying that you're really behind something, because they might misinterpret that as financial advice.
Oh no, I'm actually surprised you got those type of questions as well. But I'm glad that you didn't get anything too crazy as well. I thought you'd get like kind of, yeah, just every day. I would have assumed you got like like what should we do today, or like, I don't know, yeah, what to invest in is like a huge one. You can't answer, like, everyone is their own. You have to do your own research, or else, like, you can't blame anyone if you even see someone marketing about it, or there's a lot of like paid influences out there, and a lot of people say the worst place to even get your advice is like Twitter, because you just don't know. Like 90% of it could be paid, it could be a person, could be an influencer, KOL. And I definitely want to talk a little bit about that. I see Vitalik always mentioning about this, that Ethereum, we don't need marketing. Um, and he kind of talks a little bit about, Ethereum, like, kind of speaks for itself. If you believe in the technology, you will invest in it. If you don't, then you'll move on to a different blockchain. So what's your opinion? Like, do we need more like influencers, content creators, KOLs, whatever you want to call it? Do we need more of them within the Ethereum community? For like, do we need more marketing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated one, because I mean, in a way, there are lots of Ethereum influencers and marketers. There's people who are uh, like, their identity is like almost like just like Ethereum boosters, and or usually like a eat the asset, and they just or they're there's people who spend their life getting into tangles with Solana people, and it's just them two arguing with each other. Other people aren't being convinced by them. They're just like two influencers debating each other endlessly. Sometimes Bitcoiners are in the mix as well, and so there's always that. There's always that kind of person, and it is actually hard for me to know whether that's a benefit. Like, is that how people get sucked into, like, are people like, I guess it's one of those things that you can't really replicate how people actually get in. Yes, and so to that sort of problem, like, I would be more inclined to less focus on Ethereum needs influencers and marketers, but it definitely should have people who are similar to core devs. So core dev is typically a role that we think of as someone who's like a brilliant, technical person who is working on like the software clients of Ethereum or researching the protocol, etc. And in recent times, there's been a little bit of a change on this. I think people are starting to recognize that you could have a more, like, there's no reason, there's no like rule that says you can't have somebody who's a little bit different. So there's been a couple of additions where people who are going to look into more like funding, like deep research funding, like what we should be funding in the long term, has become like a core dev type role. And I would expand that. I would just say, get a couple of people in, call them core devs, let them be funded by the Ethereum Foundation, and then have them research things like Ethereum messaging, Ethereum North Star, how people get into Ethereum. Like, is it true? Like influencers, then maybe you can get the influencers kind of more on board. But I do think it's the more pressing question with marketing for Ethereum is trying to figure out what messages are effective and what messages work to people beyond Ethereum itself. Because the famous thing about Ethereum is nobody knows what it is, or like nobody can agree on what it is exactly. So in any one room at like ETHCC or DevCon, you go in and say, what is Ethereum? There's 50 people there, you'll get 50 answers, so that's like a big problem. Where should Ethereum be in 10 years is another one, where you're going to get like kind of like confusing terms. If you go into Solana, they have some kind of like catchy sort of memes, and decentralized Nasdaq. Kind of like just like that's it. Like that's as far as you need to go. They've got a two-liner that they can kind of throw out. So yeah, that's what I think my approach would be, and that's the advice that I tend to give. That it's get marketers, call them core devs, and then make them research what we actually are supposed to be doing. Like they're the experts. The same way you treat a core dev as a technical expert, have a marketing expert, and then make the advice non-binding. So it's not like they say we have to do this. Like they're not the ones that, like they're not literally saying we have to pick this particular meme or this particular narrative, but give you a sense of like, this is, roughly speaking, this is the kind of thing that's effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and I definitely want to quote something that you said to me before, and it was in a DM. It was a while ago. I think it was over a year ago, but you said education is very important in such a ruthless environment. So it really stood out to me, this, because I totally agree, and this is what I definitely want to portray. Like it's a fact, with the crypto space, and something I definitely want to explain to all the listeners as well with this podcast is the idea of like positive impacts on what people are actually doing in the blockchain space, and how people can transition their business even into the Web3, like how it can actually make an impact for them. But we do have to also acknowledge the environment that it currently is in, the state that it is in. It will change, hopefully, very soon. But at the moment, what we kind of have to put up with, and there's a few blockers in the way for those that are currently in it, and especially for you that has, lots of knowledge. You've been in it longer than I have been in the Web3 environment, and you have seen it adapt and change a lot. But yeah, do you want to elaborate a little bit on this and kind of like where your headspace is with that?
Yeah, I mean, so crypto is dangerous, I think is the first thing that you like that I always like. So in the classroom, like in the very first class, that's something that's more or less where I begin, like with the like what we're about to we're about to get involved in, because like some of them are interested in crypto, but a lot of them kind of aren't. Is dangerous. Like we're basically, I'm like your tour guide to a local city, and I know the city well, so I'm going to be with you. So you're going to be like, you probably be like relatively safe, but like, I'm not going to be with you on all of the tour, and then in all the other places, like people are going to be trying to pick your pockets, and like all kinds of scams are going on in the side streets. This kind of thing that you would expect when you're on holiday and you're like in a new place. So another way that I put this in articles before is this idea of like a moat. Like, so crypto is like there's like a castle. It's like this well-guarded castle, and all the good projects are in the castle behind the wall, and you have to go over this moat. And then like if you fall into the moat, it's like this like trashy place of like all the worst things that you could imagine, like Logan Paul NFTs and ransomware gangs and Lazarus Group. They're all in the moat all around it, and you have to get across the moat in order to like actually find anything decent. So I think that like I do think there's like a lot to be had in the like the honesty. Never. So one of the things I do get frustrated about with, let's say, how crypto can be marketed is when people do present it in this kind of like overly positive way, and they leave out all of the bad elements. So they're like, We need to onboard people to so that they can access some global financial kind of network, and it's all going to be beautiful. And then just leaving out all of the complexity and the stories, and having to open wallets and KYC, and also the fact that you might get SIM swapped, along on the way that you're doing this. So so I am a big believer in putting everything up to the front and being this is a very ruthless place. And then another way that I try to frame this would go against, I would say, most people's expectations in terms of how we're supposed to be promoting, is that for most people, the game of crypto is to expand it endlessly, growth. Eventually it scales to the global world. Whereas I'm more of the opinion that crypto is a subculture, a very large subculture, but that there is a certain type of person who is interested in crypto, and that there may be a kind of there is a sort of limit to the amount of people that we can probably entice in, or at least we entice them in. The other types of people, they learned and then they're gone because they've seen what they've seen. So they went to the city once and they're I'm never coming back, But there's some people in that group who are they stayed behind after the trip. So I tend to think that we're better off training people who are kind of a temperament or primed toward this kind of thing, so who have a certain ability or threshold to handle the reality of crypto. Because I don't really imagine a situation long term where this all kind of goes away. I think this is always going to be the nature of if you're talking about a world of self-custody, where we're constantly online and there is money swimming around at all points, then I can't imagine any context where we are not constantly under attack from different adversaries of some sort or the other. So I am we should have growth, but the growth should be realist, well educated in the sense of they know what they're getting into. And then once they kind of get a bit savvy, they can begin. They begin to see the opportunity and operate in a safe environment. But that's, I guess, this is why the good thing about being an academic is I could probably say that. Whereas if you're working for a company, you can't say that. You can't say that we have limit to the amount of people that we're bringing in. But I do think there is a certain by limit, I mean we're still there's still a lot of us, so it's not we're not a micro community or anything like that.
Yeah, I love the emphasis on that, or the explanation there with a tour guide. I love that, and I'm definitely going to use that going forward. I think to kind of really take a step back and compare in normal day-to-day terms. Everyone has visited or traveled someplace, even if it's only their own country. And yeah, especially Americans, lots of tour guides with them, and other communities as well. And I think we need to be able to actually distill information and make it really easy for people. And I think that's one thing I suppose even devs would struggle to do, and that's because it's not their job, which is another thing. But the way that we explain, we explain the Web3 space as technical as possible, but that's not really a way to help people. So I do agree with you that Ethereum, we need to look at it more as a subculture, rather than this is something everyone is definitely going to use in the future, because it's it's comparing to, I don't know, any currency in the real world, like dollars. Not everyone lives in USA, or not everyone uses that currency. So why would everyone use this? So I do agree with you. And I think a lot of people don't think of it that way. They just hope to have that futuristic, that future ambition that everyone will use, hopefully. But I don't think in our lifetime anyway. And I think it's...
just to add on that, because just in case I forget, because it's I think it's an important one that that I should talk about more. But if you read, say, science fiction, which I know most it's sort of, again, another kind of subculture, I guess. But if you, or even if you try to imagine yourself a kind of how our societies play out in a science fiction way, if you were writing a science fiction story, you wouldn't make I think if you're writing a realistic one, you wouldn't make crypto the main currency of the world. More likely, it would be kind of the they're using crypto, they kind of get around like some more likely like fiat blockchain kind of system. Like there would be some version of crypto which is like a government controlled, then there would be like the air crypto fighting against it or something like that. So I think that's what I tend to think. Like it's the more realistic is it's a sort of defense mechanism in a increasingly totalitarian world. So wherever we end up.
Wow. And speaking of realistic, you reminded me by saying that I definitely want to talk a little bit about AI in terms of education. Do you get especially in lots of like students right now like love AI, and there's a lot of debate even right now in secondary schools or college, whatever way you want to explain it, that like so it's banned in a lot of secondary schools, but in college it's okay. And there's not much of an age difference there. Could be just one year difference, 2 years difference, where you can't use it, you're forbidden to use it, and then you all of a sudden you can. So there's a lack of education around AI because it's forever evolving. It's evolving so fast that most of us can't keep up with it. What did I want to say with that? Oh yeah, have you used AI before in the classroom?
Not yet, but I'm not like opposed. I'm not opposed to it. I don't see it as like I like the blunt truth of it is that it ruined a lot of assessment types. So like you can no longer. I mean, you could, and people still do like essays and whatever like pieces of writing. But to my mind, like just straightforward, like asking question, a prompt, I guess we would call it now, and then like someone submits a response. So from like that's kind of like that was like really disheartening because I felt like I'd perfected like the essays and like I had my types of topics that I would ask and stuff. And then one day you wake up and you can no longer use that method because as far as I'm concerned, I mean, if I'm using ChatGPT myself, like I can see how like I would use it if I was a student. I would just like I can imagine myself like looking at this and going like, why am I writing an essay when there's a machine that can like just make the essay better than I could. So going forward, like what I'm going to do is, or what I'm hoping to do is to like find out more about, say, how people are using ChatGPT today. So in my own case, like how I use it is for, say, Etherscan. So for a long time, if I was looking at transactions, I would, and this is from like the benefit of like writing the book and all that kind of thing, where I can like understand what's happening in a transaction if I kind of slowly work it out, like right down to the bytecode. I can see, what each step is kind of doing, which is not like something that is like a super special skill. Plenty of people like in the sort of Ethereum world could do it, but now it's also something anyone else can do, right? So now you can take the Etherscan, the link, put it in, and it will do the exact same thing. And then you can kind of check and see whether it actually is doing what it's giving the right sort of output. And so like I'd be more inclined now to make that part of it, like where they're working, like responding to something from a ChatGPT output, and then like using that to kind of like instead of saying like explain what's happening in this transaction, so like look at this ChatGPT output and then see if you can see like some kind of better explanation or trying to integrate it in that kind of way. So I don't know exactly how this is going to work, but I just know that I have to do it. Like there's no getting around it. Another thing you could do as well, I think, or another thing I hope to do is like in class, like to bring stuff up, like as we're looking into topics, like have it live, like have it as a kind of co-pilot that we can look at, and then show them where sometimes it's not giving a great answer, which is something I encounter where like the explanations are almost always really good. But there are times where I could imagine you committing like a professional faux pas if you depended on it. Like it will say things like that are clearly outdated or just like misleading, and that you could take into a presentation and then like say in front of people, and they'd be like, what did you say? Like it always says Ethereum 2.0 is coming, for like upcoming, like it always kind of thinks that we're still doing the merge, stuff like that. And so what I'm trying to do with all this kind of thing is highlight that you don't want to be in a purely passive relationship with it. So it could be an effective tool, and it can probably make your life a lot easier, but you need to have like some kind of like, you need to retain something of your active brain in relationship to, or you could end up in sort of like trouble. So that's what I'm hoping to look into. I haven't looked into it sort of yet, but Yeah, trying not to. There's no point in trying to push back the tide, I guess, is the the best approach.
Yeah, no, it's just interesting to see, like, as well. And I know, like, you don't speak for everyone in, like, UCD, for example, or you don't speak for everyone, all the lecturers out there in the world. But it's interesting to see, will it become like a thing where, that you as the lecturer will have to get trained on different ways to use AI so that you can effectively teach students. But I do really like that you said that you're trying to like do a task where you're deliberately trying to catch. Like if I was a lecturer, I think like if you could deliberately try and beat AI to show like humans right now are like best instead of using AI and try and catch out the AI because you already know the answer and they can't find it or something. I think all those type of like if you gamify it, it makes it 1,000 times more interesting for students. People love to like have to play around with it and then deliberately know that it's wrong, right? And then you feel like instantly like I don't know, instantly smarter, that you're already after like that you don't really need to rely on it and try and teach yourselves that like only use it if you're really stuck. Don't have to use it for everything. And because like most things are probably archived or like things do get lost as well. Not everything is on the internet still, and especially with crypto as well. It's kind of hard to be 100% accurate, and it'll be just interesting to see in a few years time how like AI evolves.
Yeah, and another thing that I like, what I tried to say to the student, and like I say to them, but like this is probably like the some like dinosaur boomer thing that like will die out with my generation or something like this. But like I do tell them that like the knowledge that I've gained, like, and I try to stress to them like that I read a lot, like even though all this kind of thing that I do is like very fast paced kind of crypto stuff. That I still recognize and consider probably like the most important thing that I could be doing personally is to be reading books, because the information I get from books I retain a lot better. And if I like, in fact, the reason I wrote the book is like partially because I know I need to like actively like kind of be learning slowly from materials in order to be able to retain that information over a very long time. Whereas a lot of the stuff like that let's say if I use ChatGPT to summarize like a DAO governance document, that might be like a quick job that you do. I can imagine that being very helpful. Okay, you're about to join a DAO. You get a summary of the zk sync governance documents or something, or optimism or something, and then you can maybe use that like in an immediate moment. But if someone asks you about it later, like you're not going to retain a lot of it. At least that's my experience. So I do think there's like most of the things that I think people value about me and that I think will become quite valuable in the future is the ability to kind of like more spontaneously reason and argue and talk. And if you're purely passive, then I think that could be a problem. And I see that in myself, like when I'm slacking and relying on like internet material, I can feel myself kind of becoming less nimble, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I always say that don't trust everything you see on the media. I personally don't watch the news for that reason because I don't like people telling me what is like because it could be lies, and I won't even go there, but that's why I don't even watch the news. I very rarely even look at yeah, like magazines or anything like that. I just never really liked it. I like to do my own research and find things and then discover more things from that initial research. And I think that's why education is a big factor, like why I want to discuss more and more of it. In your opinion, what do you prefer, hackathons or conferences?
Yeah. So there's a lot of debate about this at the moment about what's better. You know, should we have actually? It's not just right now. After every big conference, people have an existential crisis about whether conferences should all be abandoned. Then they go to the next one anyway. So the big one at the moment is ETH Denver. Should we? The conference wasn't focused enough on Ethereum. That was like a big one. And then like there was like burnout, and then not enough new people, etc. Another big one that people talk about is ETHCC, and like whether it's in a bad location. It's like a little bit hard to get to, all that kind of thing. And then but I think with this debate between conferences and hackathons, I'm on the side of conferences because but like selfishly, because I like listening to people talk about stuff, because like that's what I do myself. Like I'm that type of person who goes to the conference. There's a tweet about this recently where they're like, who actually goes to the talks? And I was like, it's me. I'm the person who I go to everything, because I think it's one of those things that you would miss it if it's gone. So if you went to a conference, and some of the suggestions I seen were like hackathon is one of them. Another was, you would just kind of like have rooms, and then people would go like based on their interests. It's called like an unconference, all this kind of stuff. But I think all of those options wouldn't be too exciting. Like I want to hear people talk about their topic for 20 minutes. It's how I keep up on things. And my main advice for, if you want to be an expert in anything in crypto, whether it's like DAOs, DeFi, NFTs, or Ethereum, or Avalanche, or Solana, go to the conference page like the week after on YouTube. So go to DevCon YouTube, go to like Solana Breakpoint YouTube. You listen to all those videos. To be like a bunch of them. If you listen to all of those videos, watch all those videos, you would be more well informed than like 50% of the industry. If you're at 50% watching the videos, so you're not going to be, top of everything, but like that's enough to kind of like make you like a super serious, like kind of insightful person like in the world. So like I do that all the time. I watch all of the videos, and well, people kind of think that, okay, people are just, or at a conference, people are just shilling their project, or they're like using the same talk that they use somewhere else. It's a sort of snapshot of sentiment about what's happening. It gives you a sense of like broadly what people are interested in, the trends, the directions, the alpha, I guess you could say. So like last year, it was pretty clear to me that everyone's focused on like layer twos, and you could just pick up that mood. And then there's like subtopics that I could look into that I could hear. So I could hear people saying based rollups and native rollups and all these different things that I hadn't heard of. And okay, this is something to take note of. So I do think there's a lot of value in them, and that the people who are maybe tired of conferences are probably just going to too many of them. So that's probably the other thing. You shouldn't go to all of them. I don't think like you should be going to Dev Connect and ETH Denver and then ETHCC. Like that's too many. Then you are going to see the same thing. So conferences, but just make sure that you don't go to kind of all of them. And hackathons, I've like nothing against hackathons. Like I don't look, if I go to an event, like I don't go to a hackathon, even at like the one that to plug here, which would be like ETH Dublin. So this is like May 23rd to 25th. So this would be the local Irish conference. And there'll be a hackathon upstairs and a conference downstairs. And most people will probably be up at the hackathon, but I'll be downstairs at the kind of talks. So I think having both of them is basically the best approach. And like it's the boring approach, but it's the best one. And the only thing I would say is it would probably make more sense for the big Ethereum ones if they were more interlinked. So at the conference, there should be more app ecosystem stuff. So there should be more talks about applications, about like the actual ecosystem, as opposed to the infrastructure. So to most people, like while I don't mind listening to a talk about like ZK, EVM, based rollups or something like that, it might as well be, Sanskrit to most people. It's like meaningless, especially if you've never heard of Ethereum. So this stuff should be kind of in the side rooms. Like that should almost be the side event. You go to like a layer 2 obscure talk. And then the main event itself should be much more introductory. It should be much more DApp focused. At Solana Breakpoint, that's what they do. They give a kind of Solana talk, and then they give an app talk. So like one of the big projects in Solana has a speech basically, and is able to shield their project. Like it's not seen as like a bad thing. Whereas in Ethereum, they probably would feel uncomfortable if you listen to a talk and then you listen to like Aave or Uniswap. But you should, like that's I think what most people who are learning about Ethereum would be hoping to learn. Like how do I use like Uniswap, or how do I use, and it should be like that should be the topic, how to use Uniswap. Not like, what Uniswap, Unichain or something that they're not going to have any idea about. And then with the hackathons, they can be quite arbitrary sometimes, like what are they really about? Or they reflect the whims of like, some kind of like the event organizers to some extent. So Regen was the big one at ETH Denver. Whereas I think, again, probably at this point, I would be happier if they were simplified. Like if Ethereum is suffering from a need for like DApp applications, then, building simple dApps should almost be like the the hard, like that's the hard task, like building usable, simple apps. Whereas we get into like a really like zero knowledge email or something like that, like, which is for me, right? That's for someone like me, but it should be more directed outward to everyone else.
Yeah, you definitely need standalone. You need use cases in order to understand what people are talking about, especially if it's your first conference, crypto conference ever. It would be crazy, like how much information your brain is going to take in like even one day. Most conferences are like 2 days. They could even be, longer. And I think with, like, for instance, I spoke in a workshop. I did a marketing workshop, which isn't always the case for conferences. Usually there's main solo talks, or else there's a panel, and that's it. Whereas I did really like ETH Dublin did have the separation, so it's nearly like forcing. Even myself, I wouldn't usually go to a hackathon. My first ever hackathon was at ETH Dublin, and I like that I'm kind of inquisitive then, and I'm learning, a little bit more about and meeting developers way more than you would at a typical conference. It would be not many developers do I usually like connect with, at typical Web3 conferences. But I did really like that. That was in Tallinn in Estonia. I did a marketing workshop, and like the workshops do very well. So we definitely need more of them, especially in hackathons. I think, like, why wouldn't you like try and combine as many different areas as possible? Because hackathons are very like specialized. There's such like a particular niche within a niche within a niche for crypto hackathons. So we definitely need to open it up more. And not just have only for students. We want to open it up to experienced entrepreneurs. We want people from all walks of life, all ages. Whereas I think a lot of hackathons are just aimed at students and only students. And only like computer science students. So we need to try and open up that little bit more, especially in Ireland. There's so many fantastic developers here, but they might already feel like, oh, they're too experienced, or like they've already been to so many hackathons. Why would they go to this one? But you do get to learn so much from different people's like business ideas when they get to create one. And I really like the competition that they did, like to win a bounty. And like I think like anyone should be able to enter a bounty, even if you're not a developer yourself. You need different people like in a team there for the real life hackathon to present the idea. Like if you're a developer but you're really bad at speaking, no one's going to believe in you if you have no confidence, or if you can't explain what it is that you're after creating. Then the other person that's better at communicating it might win. So you definitely need different people to communicate it, and I would definitely encourage people to try and go to ETH Dublin this year.
That's where my business students come in. They'll do the nice talk. They'll market your product. If any developers out there, just let me know. I'll find you a whole army of business students to talk up your product.
Yeah, absolutely, and get them all to come to ETH Dublin. But we want more conferences, right? I think like this is kind of like the start of something beautiful in Ireland, because I think like the Web3 space is growing and growing and growing. There's lots of really small meetups, but we want it to grow larger. So anyone that like is listening that wants to learn more, they can follow. Even if you want to give your best contact email for anyone, or your Twitter handle.
Yeah, mine would be on X post_polar _.
Yeah, for any of those that think you're hard to find.
Yeah, that's pretty much that's my only social media. So, but
Oh, your only one? You don't have Forecaster or
yeah, my only Web2-ish one. Yeah. So I'm
ah?
on Farcaster. Farcaster I like as well, and Lens is the other one. I think I actually have App Polar at those ones, which is sort of the dream, for.
Nice. And do you think with the like SocialFi apps, do you think like we'll have way more of them pretty soon? Like especially like L2s, do you think like we'll have way more of them being built on that?
I'm not too like I'm always so like I do. I've gone back and forth on this that So I mean, I wrote an article a few years ago. If we want crypto to succeed, we have to give X to boot for block works. Essentially arguing that there's so many different arguments for why we need to get onto those, like why we should be on Farcast or why we should be on Lens. Namely that the nature of like the algorithmic nature is designed to kind of get us in a loop of just like negativity and arguments and so on. I think people have become better at avoiding that, but you can still see it. It still pops up on your feed. You see something crazy, you're like, why are you showing me this? Um, so and it's also the idea that we should be using our own apps. Like we have a functioning alternative to Twitter. It's called Farcaster, say, or Lens. And we don't use them. And I think that says a lot about us, like that we and then, people will say, but you need to be on X. And, I don't know whether we need to be on X is like, I know, I think I would hope for like a more ambitious approach for us. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. But first, I think they like will need to, like we do need to see more of them. Like it does seem like we like just having two of them seems kind of very limited. And L2s at the moment aren't super well distinguished. So like there's not much to distinguish, say, like Arbitrum from Optimism from ZK Sync. Like those people involved in those would tell you they're very different, but if you're like a new user looking at them, they're basically like the same thing roughly. So yeah, it's a bit of a low hanging fruit there for someone to be the like the social fi chain. Lens is on ZK Sync since yesterday, I think. Although they're up for a vote, they're going to be added to ZK Sync. So maybe that's what ZK Sync will do.
Wow, the one I use for like on Lens, there's so many different dApps. But the one I use SocialFi like related is called Orb, and it has really nice UX. I have to say, like in my opinion, way nicer than Forecaster or any other ones I've seen. And it's like as simple as like Spotify. It kind of resembles the same like UX, the layout and everything. I think that says a lot about trying to encourage like young population as well, or young generation to get involved, because social media does start out usually at a young age, and then you're there, you could be using it for the rest of your life, but we do have to try and make it visually appealing as young as possible.
Or might be the only app that I would expect to find on a young person's phone. Like it looks like if they showed me that, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's like a young person's app, like
Yeah.
like I'm on it, and I don't like, to me, like the fact that I actually like in its favor, like I think in terms of like youth enjoying it, is when I look at it, that's what it feels like to me, like a young person's kind of thing. Whereas I like Farcaster, so maybe that's like a bad sign for Farcaster. Like,
No.
it reminds me too much of like web, like X. I know this from my students. Like this is a good thing about being around like young people, teaching young people, is that you can see their attitudes to different things. And like they just don't like Twitter, they're just like most of them aren't on it. If they're on it, they've got an account that they use like just to see things on there. So to them, like when I'm talking about like we're all on crypto Twitter, they just that's something students have mentioned to me. You're mentioning about like have people asked me, like the most negative thing that they bring up is like Twitter, the fact that it's on Twitter.
Oh, really? So they just
Yeah,
really have a hatred for it. To be fair, I was one of those people as well. I had a Twitter account, I'd say, for like 5 or 6 years before I posted anything. Most people are like that, where they're just like lurking, way more than Instagram or Facebook even. Twitter, I think people are afraid to kind of start. They're afraid to get negativity. They're afraid to get like hate. But it really is a lovely place once you connect with the right people. But you can start connecting with people at these like events, right, before using Twitter, and just keep asking people for their Twitter, for their handle. You can create like a sticker, hand out stickers with like your Twitter handle and stuff like that. I always do that, and it works really well.
I think if you like Twitter is like when Twitter becomes good is when you and this is where conferences come in, right? It's the when you get to know people in real life, so that the people you're talking to are like real people, and then it changes the whole dynamic, because then it is more like social. I think like people having negative experiences, it probably is where they're like talking to people they don't know, because like unlike say like Meta or wherever, where it's like supposed to be your friend group, like on Twitter, like for a lot of people, like they're on there and they're just kind of like arguing with strangers, more or less, and it encourages that kind of behavior. I think it encourages a kind of adversarial behavior. which we're lucky we can get out of because of the real world experience. And so, you're not going to be slamming people you actually know, because you know them as real people and that they're more nuanced than, say some tweet. Like even if you see an unfavorable tweet by somebody or something that you think maybe isn't the smartest thing, because you know them, like you kind of contextualize it a bit more, you have a better sense of it. So I do think, that's where the conferences really comes in.
Yeah, even if you're not like an extrovert, I think like you have to force yourself to go to these conferences. The amount of like connections that you make, you like the very first connection could be the most important connection you made, and that was definitely for me one of the connections that I made was like a developer, and it was great to be able to hound them and ask them questions if I was unsure about something. So those type of connections you need someone that's trustworthy, and I think you'll only really find them in real life first. But yeah, that's why I like absolutely love talking to you, Paul, about like your in real life teaching, because there's a lot of educators out there that are just online. In real life you can't beat it. I think like that will never change. I think anyone that says otherwise, I think, is wrong. I believe in it that much, and I do online courses myself, but it is definitely better in person. People feel more comfortable to ask you questions. You feel more like a friend rather than like a teacher or a lecturer. Your relationship is so much better. And you can have kind of the crack as well. I feel like you don't really get that. You get awkward silences when you're doing like a Zoom call or online, and yeah, I hope that will always stay true to that as well, especially with blockchain education. So I would love if more universities in Ireland started to look at it. I went to TU Dublin, Technological University Dublin, Blanchardstown campus, because there's so many different campuses now. But originally when I first went, it was a IT. But I was one of the first years that got the university degree. And I'm very close with a lot of my lecturers, and they are inquisitive. They want to know more about the Web3 space, but I feel like we need more people that will help them get like started. So yeah, for anyone interested, they can reach out to you on Twitter.
Yeah, and this like one final thing then is that like academia can be quite conservative, but like then I would encourage, like, yeah, if there is anyone who's kind of like on the fence about that, for me, it's been very like it's been a liberation in terms of like my academic career. I was kind of it's like, what could be more exciting than the kind of endless drama of crypto to write about? It's like yeah. So if anyone was thinking of doing a course on it, then like highly recommended, and that students love it. It's a you've got like so many different classes that you're doing. Some of them maybe not the most interesting thing in the world. And you've got this class where it opens with like a 1.5 billion hack happened today, or Trump had like the crypto reserve. So it's a great topic to teach. I think I feel very lucky to do that.
Yeah, and so what is the future for Paul? Will you stay dedicated to education?
I think I don't know. I kind of go up and down on the fence on this. Like I could imagine. So like in recent years, it's definitely become like more common for people to try get me to jump the fence, because like I mean, based on I've sort of done enough work now and like have enough knowledge now where I can be, I think, useful to a lot of different people, and then also just the kinds of projects that I'm involved with kind of puts me in this. Position of like influence in some kind of way. So I'm sort of super aware of that. And that's like valuable in the crypto industry, because like reputation and trust is like this big thing. But then there's like this other part of me, which is like probably the stronger part, which always has the idea of like vocation, that teaching is a vocation, and in the sense then that you are kind of foregoing like obviously being a lecturer is a really well paid job, but like relative to crypto, it becomes like different. Only in relation to crypto, there's like academic work. Like it's not like insane money or something. But I do see it as I do think there's sort of it's important to kind of stick around, because there isn't a huge amount of us, and there isn't a huge amount of voices defending crypto in academia. So if I write an article and I submit an article to get it peer reviewed, all the reviewers are hypercritical, even if they're kind of, and this is normal enough, but they're hypercritical of crypto itself. Like the problem with the article is like, should this topic be in the journal? Not is the article good enough, but should we be covering kind of, it still has a little bit of that kind of fringe thing. So there's work to be done, and I think it's like academic work to be done about sort of the legitimation process of crypto in academia is sort of the future. I think the focus.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful way to end the podcast today. Thank you so much. Definitely follow yourself on Twitter because you will learn so much, and quite humorous as well to follow you in terms of what you share. You do a lot of like quote retweets, and I always find it humorous. So definitely, if you want to laugh as well as seriousness to learn about more about blockchain and definitely Ethereum, follow Post Polar on Twitter. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to follow us, the Lost On Chain podcast by Irish